I'm Mike Freiburger. Basically, I'm a Soil and Water District Commissioner for the Dubuque County, and I worked in soil and water conservation for 34 years. Soil health was kind of my bugaboo, and that is 4x4, and we put about a foot and a half of material in here. We put topsoil in here, we put compost and manure, and we mixed it. That's in the top 4 to 6 inches. Here we mix some compost manure in the topsoil. As if you look here real closely, the soil here is not really has developed very much yet. It will develop here as the soil bacteria and fungi get going on this soil, and the soil becomes alive. Right, basically, as they manufacture topsoil like this, they break it down, they break it up, so it kind of doesn't have a lot of active nutrients in it. It does have some organic matter in it. When we put the compost in there, basically we're hoping that the bacteria and the fungi and that really start working on this. There's no worms in here, but if you can add worms, that would help great, because they help with the aeration. If you take a handful of soil and hold it in your hand, there's more. If it's a good soil, basically there's more critters in that than people in the world. If you pack it in, what you're doing is you're slowing your infiltration down. It takes a while for that soil to rebuild itself, and what you want to do is you shouldn't have to water these beds unless it gets extremely dry. And what you want is the water to not stand on the surface at all. And the reason we put a cover on this is because when the rainfall hits the soil, it actually has that soil. It splashes up like just what I did here now, and it separates those particles out. So if you have an open garden, basically, if you just tilled this and left it alone, it's going to get a crust on it after maybe 1 or 2 rains because of that clay content on the top, and then the sun hitting it, it dries it out, and it gets real hard. So if you have a mulch on the top, that protects that soil from that splash, so it doesn't splash. The impact hits here, and it doesn't hit the soil. So that's the main reason for the cover. When the soil becomes alive again, what happens in the soil, basically, the critters in the soil actually move the nutrients in the water to the tree, to the plant, because the plant has sugars and starches in the roots from when the sunlight hits the plant, basically it produces sugars and starches. They come out in the roots, and that's what attracts those critters to come to the roots. So basically they bring the nutrients in the water to the root, and then the plant, it's a big word, it's called the symbiotic relationship here. So it goes through photosynthesis, so that's the transfer here. If you have a soil that's compacted hard, the critters can't live in that because there's very little oxygen in there. And a good example of how to explain this to you is basically if you take 2 jars and you fill one with sand and you fill one with pebbly sand, basically it's got a lot of pebbles in it, which one will take the most water in? Well, the one that's got a lot of rock in will take a lot more water in through it because it's got all that space in between the particles. We're trying to get nature started in this raised bed so that you can produce a good crop out of here. It makes the nutrients in the soil more available. So if you did put fertilizer on here, you kind of want to be a little bit careful, because you don't want to really fertilize it too much, because then you're kind of destroying the activity of the soil. Now if you wanted to plant in here, basically remove that cover and then maybe pull your roll like this, basically do that, and put your plants in here. If you get the mulch pretty much out of there, and so you can get a nice cover on that soil, on that plant. But don't worry about having a little bit of cover in here, because that plant will grow right up through that. So a good example is a dandelion seed flies on your lawn. You got a good tight lawn, all of a sudden you got a dandelion in there. Well, that dandelion grew up through that tight cover. So same thing here. In this bed here, you could probably put, I would say probably maybe 3 or 4 tomato plants here. You could stake them nice. You could maybe put a row of peas over there. Put a trellis or something for that. You could put something over here, and you could have something in here for lettuce. I can see a lot of things growing in this thing here. And you got bare ground here. Guess what? You're going to be pulling weeds here in a week or 2. What you want to do here is go to, well, Steve's here has cover crops. One of the cover crops that's the easiest to work with is oats. If you can get oats, just put this area, cover it with oats, it'll get green. And what you're doing there is basically you're keeping that soil alive. And as that roots grow in the soil, that actually helps the fertility, because that's what builds the organic matter. You're actually capturing carbon from the air and putting it in the soil. So that's what you want to do with these beds, is capture as much carbon as you can. The nitrogen and the phosphorus and that stuff, you know, you can always add that, but you can't add the carbon, because once the carbon's gone, it's hard to get carbon to put it back in here. Make sure that the soil does, and also that cover on the top keeps the soil from getting too warm, because uncovered soil, if you add black soil like here, I'll uncover some here now. If you add that black soil like this right here, basically that'll get about 150, 160 degrees during the summer with the sun hitting that. And when the soil gets about 105 degrees, all activity in the soil stops.